Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this discussion. Uh, is there anyone who is not using any Google service in a day? From Gmail, search? No? So you see, we all use Google, and Google has become one of the first places most of us turn to when we seek information online. Providing relevant and reliable information should be somewhat challenging and creating a safe environment at scale. Amanda will explain to us what Google does to deliver trusted and safe experiences. Amanda, before going to questions, can you speak a little bit about what you are doing and trust and safety department within global Google Galaxy? I guess it's not clear for many of us the role of this department.
Absolutely. Nice to see everyone here today. So I'm Amanda Story, Managing Director of Trust and Safety at Google. And what Trust and Safety is really about is setting the policies for what content can stay up across our products, what content can come down, and which content can monetize. Now, those policies are all very well, but they only work if you can actually apply them at scale. And so the other part of our business is figuring out ways to apply content policies at scale consistently. And in that space, we use a combination of machines and humans. The machines for scale and for speed, and the humans for the context and nuance that you need in the more subtle and newer areas of use. So that's the work of Trust and Safety.
So this week, the European Union Digital Market Act came into force, and it will bring significant changes in how tech platforms are serving people in Europe. And this DMA will be followed by another landmark legislation, which is called Digital Service Act, which aims together with DMA to create a safer and open digital space for people in Europe and I think beyond Europe. So what will change for Google and what will be the impact of DSA on Google services in Europe?
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, the DSA is a big landmark regulation in the content space. And there are kind of three main areas to simplify what is a very complex regulation. The first is around risk. Really, the regulation requires us to look at a bunch of different societal risk areas and analyze whether we're addressing those risks sufficiently. The second area is about user recourse. So the regulation has a bunch of operational and process changes that are required to make sure we're giving users and businesses the opportunity for redress if they disagree with an enforcement decision, the opportunity to appeal and have that reviewed. And the final area is oversight. So the DSA creates an entirely new oversight regime where regulators can audit technology companies according to how they're managing content. They can seek data, they can send in researchers, they require certain metrics to be published. So this is kind of the basics of DSA. What I would say about the DSA is that it is an enormous regulation. The scale of it, the scope of it is pretty phenomenal in terms of the impact on our processes, our technologies, the way we run our business. So for example, we typically would look at how abuse is manifesting or harms are manifesting product by product. The DSA requires us to actually look at it through this societal risk lens that they have dictated. So that's a big change just to the infrastructure and the data with which we run our business. But also it's the speed of the DSA. So if you look at something like the GDPR, we had 2 years between the GDPR text being published and needing to be compliant. With the DSA, we have 8 months. The text got published about a week ago. We need to be ready with our largest online platform, search engine, by end of June of next year. So the speed of it is quite phenomenal. So we're really focused right now on complying and on engaging really constructively with the European regulators as we get ready for that compliance. And we're building on 20 years of experience of investing in information quality across our products and many, many years of experience complying with country-by-country laws in places like Australia, India, Germany, in different parts of content. So a lot to do, but a lot to build from.
Yeah, thank you. So Google is publicly committed to fight disinformation or misinformation, but different studies, especially from fact-checking newsrooms, shows that there is still a lot to do, especially in your search engine, Google Search, which is a kind of gateway to information for millions of people. For example, Google ads appear on thousands of pages spreading false news or disinformation as verified by these fact-checking newsrooms. Do you have any specific plan to fight misinformation or disinformation in your search engine? for like harmful content or all kinds of misinformation type?
Absolutely. So information quality is really at the heart of Google's mission. Our mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. And that useful word is really important here. Information is not useful if it's low quality or if it's harmful. And so this is a space we've invested in for a very long time. Mis and disinformation, I want to be clear about the definition of the two, because I think they're often used interchangeably. Misinformation is information that may be incorrect, but it's not nefarious. It's not spread by a state actor. Disinformation is coordinated deceptive campaigns targeted, spread by state actors. So that's an important differentiation between the two. Obviously, this kind of content is evolving every single day. Every single day, 15% of the searches that we see, we've never seen before. And when you think about how long search has been going and how many searches are happening, that's pretty amazing, actually. Every day, we have 500 hours of YouTube videos uploaded every minute. So there's a lot of new content going out there onto our services. There's also a lot of bad actors who are trying to evade detection, who are trying to circumvent our policies and our enforcement mechanisms. And so with mis and disinformation, what's really critical is that we use intel, we use partners to identify those new narratives, we use technology to identify signals of state actors trying to spread disinformation campaigns, and that we keep pace with that. And the actions that we can take are multifold. We can take down content, we can demonetize content. And just to give you a sense of scale, last year we demonetized 1.7 billion publisher pages and demonetized at the site level, so not the page level, the site level, 63,000 publisher sites. So we're constantly trying to identify these signals of mis and disinformation and make sure that we're acting quickly to keep users safe.
Another question linked to this is the disparity in your investment or oversight in languages other than English. We see that there's a significant investment, but when you look at other languages, especially in some regions like Balkans, so it is not the same thing, and we feel like we see that it is not the same investment. So how do you plan to, close this gap between English and other languages?
Yeah, so I was in the Balkans recently doing a tour around to speak to people about the Ukraine war and to understand their perspectives on how we were doing, what we could do better to build up our base of what we call trusted flaggers in the region who can give us signals about content that is potentially harmful that we should look at more closely. And I did absolutely hear the concern about some languages, our classifiers do not seem to be working as effectively as others. What I would say is that these classifiers, this machine learning technology for detecting bad content at scale and at speed, really depend on data. They depend on being trained on data. And so in languages where we see more bad content, those classifiers do get trained with more data. Now, whenever a human makes a decision on our surfaces, that human decision feeds back in to retrain the classifiers. So this is an area where we can use a blend of machines and humans to continually try and improve. But for smaller languages, it is more challenging because there is not as much data out there. There's not as much bad activity out there to train the classifiers to do that work effectively. But definitely an area of investment for us. We have 20,000 moderators around the world, deeply trained with covering every language, and they're the folks that we really rely on to train the classifiers and make them better.
Yeah. To follow up on war in Ukraine, is we know that it's also a war of information. And we know that some platforms decided to create their content, Russian content, to prevent any war propaganda or misinformation. And Russia blocked platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you halted your advertising activity in Russia. But as far as I know, Google is not banned in Russia. How do you manage the right balance between keeping your services open, search, maps, news, and preventing spreading false news?
Yeah, that balance is exactly the right word. And we're always trying to strike that balance in terms of the actions we take locally, the actions we take globally. And absolutely, some of our services are still available in Russia, and we think that that's really valuable in terms of getting international information to Russian people. In the case of the Ukraine war, at a time of war, information quality really is the difference between life and death. And so we think about information quality with what we call the 4 Rs, raise, reduce, remove, and reward. In the raise space, at the beginning of the war, we partnered with the Ukrainian government, with expert agencies like the UNHCR, to make sure we were getting high quality information out to individuals in Ukraine. For example, we repurposed our earthquake alert technology in Android to create an air raid alert, so very low latency alert to literally help people get to safety quickly. In the reduced space, so our second R, we tried to make sure we were limiting the spread of potentially borderline content. So this is content that isn't illegal, it doesn't violate policies, but it is sort of on the border. And think about things like a misinfo narrative we saw that was trying to connect the word inflation with the word sanctions in Russian language. So think about that, blaming inflation on sanctions rather than blaming inflation on the war. Really subtle, but as we started detecting that content, we were able to reduce the spread of that content by not having it actively recommended unless people were looking for it. Remove, so we were removing a ton of content, particularly state-controlled media. So we did take action initially in Europe and then globally on state-controlled media, on the Play Store, on search, on YouTube, to make sure we were not spreading Russian disinformation. And finally, reward. So you mentioned advertising, and we took kind of two main actions in the ad space during the beginning of the war. The first was that we blocked all advertising, all Google advertising in Russia. And that was an important decision we made fairly early on. And we also blocked all ads that related to the war. We've done that a few times before in what we call sensitive events, like at the beginning of COVID. And the point of that is when we can't ensure quality of the ads that are serving, so the actual text of the ad, the image of the ad, we can't ensure quality, we don't want them to run. And we're very happy to take that commercial hit to make sure users are kept safe and we're not running bad ads. So that was something that we did early on as well to protect information quality. We're very honored that we were awarded a Peace Prize by President Zelensky for the work that we've done with his government to try and maintain information quality in Ukraine, around the world, and in the way we've handled Russia.
Yeah. Fighting against disinformation or fighting harmful content as defined by the law is crucial in democratic societies, but also, I think, as a journalist, it shouldn't jeopardize the right to free speech. Overall, in your activities to keep Google safer for us. So how do you balance this threat of disinformation and the risk of restricting free speech?
Absolutely. So there are content laws in various countries around the world, and we always meet those laws, but we actually go further than that, and that's what our policies are all about. We're trying all the time with those policies to balance freedom of speech with harm mitigation for users and for societies. And we do that by looking at examples of where we're seeing fringe new types of harm, new types of abuse, new types of content emerging online. We talk to experts about their opinion on those new trends, and we use that expert opinion to inform the evolution of our policies. And then we test it. We see if the policy that we've launched is actually working, if it's actually mitigating the harm, if it's balancing free speech appropriately, and we use those tests to then decide whether policies roll out at scale. So that's how we're balancing it. We also have a balancing that we do with illegal content, though. So we get a lot of requests from regulators and governments around the world to take down content that they deem to be violative. And sometimes it's under valid local laws, and sometimes it's a stretch. And that is a constant discussion, negotiation with the governments around the world to agree what comes down, what stays up. And what we've done to make sure that that is transparent is for about 10 years now, we've published both regular transparency reports, but also a database of all of those illegal content takedowns to make sure that can be scrutinized and governments can be held to account on how they're handling that. But it's absolutely a balance.
Yeah. Another question about safer internet is online fraud, scam adverts, which have become both like a national issue in many countries, including developed countries. And its scale is terrifying, happening on an industrial scale. People lose their life savings, millions, through these scam adverts. It is considered a national threat, as I said. But you said in the backstage that you have been working on this, but it's still happening. So could you elaborate on this, on your efforts to fight these online scams? Anything new to fight? And have you ever compensated any victim because of this fraud advertised by your platforms?
So scams are a really complex area. I mean, you have to think about this in terms of this being sophisticated, organized crime, designed to evade detection, like identity theft, like hacking. It's sort of the same realm. And what's really complicated with scams is that they often weave online and offline, and they weave on-platform and off-platform. And so no one player has full information to actually determine that a particular user journey resulted in a scam. In that context, collaboration is absolutely key. So between tech, telcos, banks, law enforcement, governments, because only when you stitch all those signals together can you actually definitively determine that something is a scam. We're investing a lot in sort of upstream verification of advertisers in areas where we've seen scams emerge. So we partnered, for example, with the UK Financial Conduct Authority, and we've done this in multiple countries around the world now, partnering with the local financial regulator to get a list of who is actually an authorized financial services advertiser. And every single advertiser, before they can serve a financial services ad to a user, has to be checked against that list. That's something that's worked very effectively in the UK. We've heard from banking partners that since we implemented that certification scheme, calls to their customer services saying that a scam initiated on Google have fallen off a cliff. So it works, and having seen it work in the UK, we're rolling it out around the world. And that's the sort of thing that we can do unilaterally to get upstream of scams, to verify actors and make sure that users are not getting harmed. But this is absolutely something that's going to require ongoing collaboration for the sort of signal sharing that's critical to identify that sort of behavior.
Yeah, last question about the partnerships. I guess collaboration with public authorities is crucial, very important in helping people stay online, fighting disinformation. And you said you are working with different governments, local authorities, European Union, or other international organizations. So, but I have a question about, like, when you look at the landscape, almost all tech giants like Facebook, Google, others, you are all faced with the same problem. So you guys, why you are not cooperating, creating a kind of, alliance, because you are faced with the same problems, and creating a kind of bridge among you. And is it happening? This is something that you are thinking, and why you are not cooperating among these big tech platforms to tackle with these safety issues online?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are absolutely spaces where we're collaborating and have been for many years. If you look at something like child safety, there's a group called NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the US. And all tech companies have partnered with NCMEC to send signals to them when we identified child sexual abuse material or child exploitation on our platforms. They then can pass those on to law enforcement and actually, in some cases, identify perpetrators and save children's lives kind of in the moment. So we partner via the Tech Coalition with NCMEC in the child safety space. We also all partner on what's called GIFCT, which is violent extremism hash sharing. So actually sharing signals of videos, images, text related to violent extremism so we can all identify it faster and take it down faster. So there are areas where that collaboration is working really well. Where it's trickier and where there's more work needed is where it touches on individual user data. So in the case of scams, for example, personal information is part of what needs to be shared to identify the scam, and that does make it substantively more complicated. But in areas like child safety and violent extremism, there's really good progress made, and those are good models to build on. And maybe one example I'll share from child safety, we have a technology called the Child Safety API, which is to help identify child sexual abuse material at scale very quickly. It's such a good technology that we've now offered it for free to everyone around the world who wants to use it. It's used by most of the major tech players, and we're processing of the order of 4 billion images a month through that technology to help identify CSAM faster, take it down faster. And I think that sort of technology sharing, that best practice sharing is something that the industry needs to continue to do more of, which is why we got involved in organizing a group called the Digital Trust and Safety Partnership, DTSP, last year, which is trying to develop standards for risk assessments, for audits, for technologies, for tech companies to be able to do more of that sharing faster.
Thank you. So we're running out of time. Thank you so much, Amanda, for your great insights and answers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.